Maybe you remember the old movie, The Sum of All Fears, and you think about that cable that he was sending to the president to say, hey, if you do this, this could take place, don't go to war. That's kind of what a dissent cable is coming out of the Kabul embassy, except for President Biden did not view the dissent cable. And this was probably the most substantial dissent cable in the history of the United States of America. Hey everybody, I hope as always you've had a great week. I've got updates on what's happened here in Washington, D.C. this week. We're going to look at Lake Okeechobee, the Afghanistan withdrawal, Joe Biden's student loan bailout. Let's get into all of it. First up, I joined my colleagues in the House Committee on Natural Resources. I don't sit on that committee, but I joined them for a hearing with administrators from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, what's commonly known as NOAA, and the National Marine Fisheries Service, what's known as NMFS, which is a division of NOAA. I asked for special permission to join that committee because I have a lot of questions for NOAA and for NMFS about what they've been doing with the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual. Let's back up though. As a refresher, one of the first laws that I passed as your representative in Congress was to require the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to rewrite the management schedule, the book for Lake Okeechobee. Now, as a result of that law, a group known as the Project Delivery Team, I was a part of the PDT, a host of other stakeholders and government agencies, all a part of this Project Delivery Team, been meeting regularly for the last 4 years to create the new Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual, or rather to give input on what would be the new operating manual. This is the system that the Army Corps will use to determine when water is released from the lake into the surrounding estuaries like St. Lucie or the Caloosahatchee, and how much and at what time of year. Very important discussion for our community. Now, NMFS, who testified before the Natural Resources Committee this week, was invited to be a part of that project delivery team. But they basically told all of the rest of the stakeholders and government agencies, everybody else, that they were too busy to be involved with it. That's what they said in a letter roughly 4 years ago. And so we moved on without them, without their participation. For 4 years, we met and debated how to best balance the concern of all stakeholders, and we were finally at the finish line. LOSOM was supposed to be implemented next month, but at the literal 11th hour, and after 4 years of silence and not attending meetings to be educated on everything that was happening with the new manual, NMFS chimed in and expressed concerns about LOSOM's impact on red tide on the west coast of Florida. They've requested a formal biological study, and in doing so, delayed the implementation by at least 6 months, or a whole summertime rainy season, hurricane season, when Florida is most impacted by what's going on with LOSOM. So yeah, I had some questions for NMFS and NOAA, but unfortunately, they didn't want to give answers. To your knowledge, is NMFS looking to make changes to the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual as has been put forward to this point and agreed upon by basically everybody?
At the moment, Congressman, we have not yet concluded our analysis. We still have a month to go on that, and we're working through that.
They again tried to blame the entire situation on being short-staffed for an agency whose mission is the conservation of protected resources and healthy ecosystems. You'd think that they could manage to spare a few hours a month to engage in a project that has the potential to dramatically improve the environment off the coasts of Florida. You go beyond that and understand that that project delivery team started meeting just before COVID. And when COVID started, all of their people started working from home. All of the project delivery team meetings were online. You would have thought that during COVID they could have found the time, since their people were working from home, to attend those online meetings. But again, they didn't. Everything about this to me seems a little bit fishy. They were working with the Army Corps right now behind closed doors without everybody paying attention to what's going on, not even having access to it. And the bureaucrats in charge of the agency, they won't answer basic questions in front of Congress because of their decision to finally pay attention. We have to deal with another rainy season under the outdated and ineffective schedule known as LORS. That means more discharges potentially for our community. Now, moving forward, my goal is to make sure that NMFS BS does not undo all of the work that for the last 4 years has taken place to put LOSUM in place. We will get that implemented as soon as possible so that we can end the toxic discharges, send that water where it needs to go through, naturally through the system. As always, I'm going to keep you updated every step of that way. Now, switching gears, Afghanistan. Months before the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, we could call it an abandonment, staff at the embassy in Kabul, they issued what's known as a descent cable. Maybe you remember the old movie, The Sum of All Fears, and you think about that cable that he was sending to the president to say, hey, if you do this, this could take place, don't go to war. That's kind of what a descent cable is coming out of the Kabul embassy, except for President Biden did not view the descent cable, and this was probably the most substantial descent cable in the history of the United States of America. It was joined by dozens of embassy personnel. Most of the time, these descent cables are one, maybe two people. So it was unprecedented that it was several dozen people that were issuing this descent cable about what was taking place, and we saw the outcome. Americans lost their lives. For months now, the House Foreign Affairs Committee has been asking to read that descent cable because we believe it offers critical insight into the situation on the ground and how the administration got the withdrawal so wrong. But Secretary of State Antony Blinken has refused to let anybody see it. This week, in a compromise, we'll call it a compromise, they agreed to let the chairman of the committee, Congressman Michael McCaul, and the ranking Democrat of the committee, Gregory Meeks, read the cable. They're not going to let the rest of the members of Congress read it at this point. Let me tell you why this is an idiotic compromise, unacceptable. The chair of the Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee, that's me, a veteran, left limbs in Kandahar, Afghanistan. My job was to make sure that the 13 Gold Star families and millions of veterans who poured their blood, sweat, and tears into Afghanistan, it's to make sure that they get the answers that they deserve. The descent cable is an essential piece of that puzzle. And I, as well as every other member of this committee, has the right to read that cable, even though Joe Biden didn't think that it was worth his time. And again, we saw what happened. 13 Americans lost their lives. So if Secretary Blinken and the rest of the bureaucrats at the State Department think that this is where it ends, they're wrong. We're not going to stop pushing for accountability and for the answers. Finally, on the House floor this week, we did something that we should have done a long time ago. Passed legislation to nullify Joe Biden's asinine student loan bailout. We spoke about it, how against it we were, his proposal to force hardworking taxpayers to pay off debts for billionaires' kids or their Ivy League education, or really anybody. It's a slap in the face to anybody who worked their way through school or used a GI Bill or saved for 18 years in order to send their kids to school or join the military or some other way in which they decided to go out there and pay for their schooling and be responsible with what they committed to do, paying loans that they agreed to pay. Now, while I don't expect the Democrat majority in the Senate to pass this bill or President Biden to sign it into law, it does send a clear message that House Republicans are serious about responsible spending. We're not going to allow the president to spend your dollars like monopoly money. And of course, we know that this is something that is on the negotiating table for Speaker McCarthy as he's speaking with President Biden about what's going to take place if there's going to be any raising of the debt limit. That's what I was elected to stand for. And especially as debt ceiling negotiations are ongoing, it's what we will continue to stand for. Now, as always, I hope that you all have a great weekend back home. Especially hope that you're all able to take a moment, reflect on the meaning of Memorial Day as we recognize it on Monday. Don't just take it as a day where there's sales at the auto dealership or somewhere else, or a time to barbecue, or it's time to go to the beach. It is time for fellowship as well. That can be part of remembrance. But take the time to remember those that served and gave their lives serving our country. My biggest piece of advice is to find a way to make it personal. Everyone likely knows somebody or has someone in their community who's given their life in the line of service. I encourage you, say their names, read about their stories, share their stories with your family, thank them, their families, for their sacrifice. On that note, I look forward to seeing you all around town. You all take care. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe. I will be back on YouTube with more exclusive content, so stay tuned.